Okay, greetings, brothers and sisters. I want to start here. So there's a football game. Today is Friday the 21st, I believe, of November. I don't know where my phone is, but if I have to change that, I will. But it's definitely Friday. Did I say Thursday? It's Thursday, I think the 21st of November. And I watched a little bit of this football game to start off. It was between the Steelers and the Browns. You see the snow coming down here. And, when I first started watching it, I had no interest in it. The Cleveland Browns have a horrible season. And they, they made this trade for this uh, quarterback that was had like 35 women accused of massage therapists of sexual offenses, right? And he he ended up they paid a lot for him in terms of they gave him a like this huge guaranteed contract, like $60 million a year, something crazy like that. Deshaun Watson, and he hadn't played football for a year or two, and he had this scandal, and they gave up a lot of their assets to acquire him to the Houston Texans, who are now doing great and have a great quarterback from Ohio, ironically, Ohio State. And so they've been searching for a quarterback for years. They had this guy Baker Mayfield who, they were featured one year in the show Hard Knocks, and they had Baker Mayfield. They drafted number one, and he was playing okay. He was kind of obnoxious, but for whatever reason they didn't like him, and he bounced around the league, and now he's playing great for Tampa Bay. And they've had this situation. A number of teams have had this where they had a quarterback, and when they had him, he sucked, and then he goes to a better organization and they're good, right? So Cleveland Browns have like just no point here to this season, but they end up playing great, and they're playing in the snow, and it was kind of amazing to watch. This brought me back to when I was a kid, because there was football games like this all winter, because there was no indoor stadiums. There's no stadiums with roofs. They had this like stuff with you see it now with the Green Bay Packers and here with the Cleveland Browns, where there's just you could barely see what was going on because the snow was so heavy. It was coming down so heavily. And so, I really enjoyed the game. It was a good game. And, Pittsburgh Steelers are a very boring team. It was very defensive oriented. But the snow made it kind of great. And I remember, and like I said, it like brought me back to my youth. It was one of the kind of great things about football that there was weather conditions in the winter, and it changed the way everybody ran. I mean, it affected the game. You could see the guys are barely, running fast because, if you ever played in snow, and we did when we were kids, we used to play football when it's snowing, back when I lived in Connecticut, a very northern state, and we'd be playing football in that snow. There'd be like a layer of ice on top of 4 inches of snow, and we'd be crunching through it in our boots, and you could barely hold on to the football because you had like gloves on or mittens or some shit. And it was just a lot of fun. And, that stuff has all disappeared. Like that kind of, I mean, I guess it has. Maybe there's some kids that still are doing this stuff. You don't see it, though. Like we'd be out there, when it was snowing and doing things outside in the streets. Like the streets weren't plowed, so we do sliding things or whatever it is. These big snow suits. The Amazon had to draw these lines. Like these lines weren't there; you couldn't see them, so they artificially put these lines in, which made it interesting, because then the lines were on the people when when the player would walk in front of their graphic. It kind of made it interesting, illusionary type of thing going on. But I just want to start this video off saying, like the way they've done modernization and these indoor um, football stadiums that are climate controlled. It's more enjoyable, I'm sure, for the fans. Although it was probably fun for them to be out in the snow for a little bit, right, in the rain and things like this. But the fans, the Cleveland Brown fans, to their credit, they were Pittsburgh travels. Their team travels quite a bit. Their team, let's look at this thing. Their team travels, and their fans travel, but they didn't they couldn't crowd. The Cleveland fans filled up the stadium, even though their team is horrible and has no chance for like anything like playoffs or anything. But it was just like great, fun thing to watch. Okay, let's go to the UFO thing. Okay, I showed you a little bit of this hearing on UFOs or whatever the EMPs, whatever they call them, the EMPs, whatever they call them. It's a new term for them now. And it's interesting because they've had so many of these hearings, right? And let's watch a little bit of this here.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Mr. Elizondo, does any branch of the United States government or defense contractors possess technology?
Sir, there's documentation that I believe was submitted for the record that was approved for release by the U.S. Pentagon, by the Department of Defense Office of Pre-Publication Security Review, and it states one of the reasons why my predecessor program, OSAP, was trying to collect material of unknown origin.
Was it successfully collected?
It was not. What happened is that there was an aerospace contract company that requested to divest itself of the material that was collected in the 1950s. Right. Unfortunately, that didn't actually occur.
So let's dive into that.
So they're saying they have technology. They have whatever it is, spaceships or things. The fact that they're having these hearings is a sign of something, right? Okay, so I looked it up, and it is Chariots of the Gods. There's another book, a series of books one of them's called Forbidden Archaeology, this guy, Michael Cremo, and he used to make his rounds around the truth community and be interviewed, and you can find his interviews. And he talks about all these things that have been found that blow up the Darwinian theory and some of these other things. Like some guy, like a human being, they were mining for marble. And marble takes like 1 million years. It's like marble's 1 million years old to form, right? This, marble countertops. They were cutting the marble, and they cut into a skeleton. There's like a fully formed human skeleton that was 1 million years old, right? Which, again, blows away all these theories of. They said the first human beings are 180,000 years ago with Neanderthal men and things like that, and that's horseshit. Like that's like I was saying about the origin of our species. If they're lying to you about the origin of our species, the origin story, whatever it is, then they're lying to you about everything. Like, if you don't know where you came from historically and all these other things, and there's all these myths and, the book of Genesis and all this stuff, and, people thinking the earth is only 5,000 years old, because of the Christian, interpretation of the Bible. But then the scientific community has been lying about all this other shit and put out this faulty theory in Darwinism. And so, it's there, like there's information out there and they're covering it up, or they're putting it out like disinformation and, whatever it is.
These phenomenon, how they interacted around military equities and nuclear equities. So I'm certainly not a medical expert. I would not be able to probably provide you a whole lot of value in that simply because I don't have the expertise.
But was anything described as that we have possession of bodies?
Yes.
Is it multiple types of creatures or?
Sir, I couldn't answer that. I can tell you anecdotally that it was discussed quite a bit when I was at the Pentagon. The problem is the supposed collection of these biological samples occurred before my time, in fact, before I was even born.
And was this part of the Lockheed Martin discussion, or was this the biologists is a complete?
Like the Nephilim in the Bible, like there's talks of giants in the Bible. And there's evidence of giants, and there's just, if there was giants and they have skeletons, right? Then they have the information, they could say this was, the case. And they'd be like, well, how does that go with Darwin, right? Like, how does that go with the Darwinism or any of these other, what do you mean they were giants? What happened to them, right? And all these things. And so, they've been lying to you. And the more important part of this is the depth of the lies. Because when you have to lie about something, then you have to create a false history. You know, that this means that they are divulging something. They've been getting closer and closer to divulging things. They've already shown videos of these objects. For years, they said, "Oh, it's a weather balloon or just whatever," right? And now, in the past so many years, and it's becoming more and more intense, right? They're bringing in these people to talk about these, whatever they're calling UAPs or something. And it's a big step towards something, some kind of disclosure, right?
The Bigelow Airspace, correct? So
Yes, sir.
there was a journalist, Christopher Sharp, who said that there was a transfer between Lockheed Martin, Bigelow Airspace, and the CIA allegedly blocked this. Can you describe that?
What I can say is that it was blocked. Why it was blocked, I can only surmise. I was part of some conversations later on with some of those contract personnel where they had told all of us that is accurate. What we required was a memo from the Secretary of the Air Force in order to make that complete, and that never occurred. And so when Secretary Mattis became Secretary of Defense, I decided it would be appropriate for me to try to receive a memo from him as SecDef, as Secretary of Defense, if we could not get a memo from the Secretary of the Air Force to transfer that material.
So if that material exists today, who's in possession?
Sir, I wouldn't be able to have that conversation in an open hearing. We'd probably have to have that.
Okay, my question to you then is,
Okay, so, if they're admitting they have stuff, there has been UFO presences. There has been the presence of spaceships and what Aboriginal people, some of them called sky people, for a number of years. Like the evidence of these primitive cave art and then these tales of these people, as well as, there used to be like spaceships just flying around and like primitive peoples, not only just Aboriginal people, but, in terms of like these, you find this in European paintings and things like this, right? Used to look up when they, that didn't have the ability for any kind of, didn't have cars or they didn't have, airplanes. And they knew that there was people flying around above them. And that was just accepted. And everybody knew, like, that there was this condition of, there was these other species just doing shit in the sky or whatever. And they documented in various forms, story and or artwork and things like this. And then there are artifacts. And like you can find in the ancient Egyptian pyramids, there's all these, I've showed you all the pictures and things. There's space people and things that are in some of these artifacts. Like there's spaceships and stuff that are in some of the, either, they're things that people made or they are part of they're carvings or something, sculptures, or they were actual artifacts or whatever it was of technology that was the people back then weren't supposed to possess. And so for whatever reason they disappeared or they hid themselves. And there's been none of that, and the people that control the system have pretended that they don't exist, right? Even though there's all this evidence. And now they're like, yeah, they kind of exist, but I really can't talk about that. Like, it's just, and then you question, why are they doing it now? What reason? And how much are they going to divulge? And what's the story? Because they're not trustworthy, because they've lied about this. And it changes everything, right? If there's been interactions between higher technologically developed beings and maybe more advanced intelligent beings than people, than human beings, then we're no longer the top of the food chain. And what has their role been, in terms of all the things that have gone on in planet Earth in our history? Like, how long have they been here? How have they affected the planet? Has there been any genetic manipulation, which there seems to be evidence for, lots of it, right? And so, why are they divulging this now? I mean, these are the questions that...
if we were in a secure setting, if we were in a SCIF, would you be able to provide or get access to something, whether it's visuals or material that we could put our hands on or biologics that would convince me, that would show me that we have non-human origins.
Sir, that decision would not be mine. That would be to the gatekeeper still in the U.S. government.
And who would we, so if you were in our shoes, where would you go from here? How would you?
So why don't you have the gatekeepers testify? Like, why did you say, all right, we're the gatekeepers, let's bring them. You know, you can summon them to this hearing, right? As soon as the guy said, I don't have access to that, I can't do that for you, but there's gatekeepers. Oh, there's gatekeepers? Where are the gatekeepers? Bring the fucking gatekeepers in here, right? And get them to bring some alien DNA or some things here. You know, let's have show and tell, right? You know, and like, this also tells you they're lying to the American people. So if this guy, whatever the guy's testifying, is, you know, officially involved with this, he has access to these things, and, you know, he's sufficient enough that they're bringing him out there, and he's telling you there's gatekeepers, that means they have been lying to you about this, and if they're lying to you about this, then they're lying to you about everything. And it changes everything, you know, from the Bible to the, you know, to religions, to science, to all, you know, they say, you know, trust the scientists. Well, not if they're lying to you. What else are they lying to you about? Well, there's giants, so there's giants too. Well, what else? Oh, Bigfoot, you know, like, okay, what else? 9/11? What do you mean? Like, you know, where does it end, right? If they're keeping secrets from you as something as important that as there are higher developed beings than us, technologically and advanced maybe with whatever ways, that have coming to Earth and been a part of Earth historically, because they didn't just show up. And so, you know, it's not like humans and them haven't had contact before, because they have, because it's in historical records, right?
Get that information? Where, you know, a lot of times we just don't know who to ask because we don't know where to go next. So if you were in our shoes, where would you go?
Well, I prefer to answer that question in a closed session. However, we established Arrow for that very purpose, and unfortunately, under its previous leadership, it failed. So one would hope that they would have the authorities necessary to do that. Let's hope that this new iteration of leadership will be successful.
In the discussions, it's simply about material, or is there discussion about it was previously testified that there was biologics that were collected. Are you aware of any of that?
I am, sir, aware of the reporting that biologics have been recovered. Again, my focus was more nuts and bolts, looking at the physical aspects of the...
You know, there's a book, and I think it's called Chariots of the Gods. It's an old book. And in the book, I'll look up the proper name in a moment. But in this book, they document newspaper writings and reports of extraterrestrials across history. You know, 1300, you know, whatever it was, like something like that, 500, you know, AD, you know, after Christ or whatever. Like things that they found, writings that documented extraterrestrial presences. I'm so I just made up a word. I'm using it, like a presence and interactions. And one of them was interesting, that these creatures that were like 7-8 foot tall came down, and they were wearing suits, like black suits, and they were spraying some sort of a gas, and then there was huge population reduction, like the Black Plague or something like this. Like, I can't remember it specifically, but I'm pretty sure it was the Black Plague. And all these people died. And that was how the mythological creature called the Grim Reaper was born. Because these people, you know, that were there said that they had these like wands, long sticks that were spraying some kind of gas out. And the gas created the Black Plague and major population reduction. And these creatures, you know, that was what the Grim Reaper came from. They looked like the Grim Reaper, like they had these size, you know, that's how they saw it, right? But things like that, like some of the interactions were less prolific or whatever, but there was these interactions. And again, newspaper articles that are, you know, quoted from and things. And so, you know, this has been around for a while. Whatever reason, they've been able to cover it up for the last so many, you know, modern civilization. So there's another clip here, which I'll show you, but so I'm switching over. But what I was saying was that if they have to cover up something, they have to remove something significant from our history and our story, the presence of any of these different types of creatures and things that are left out of our history and things that are significant, then there's a hole there. And so they have to make up stories to, fill in these gaps. It's not just omitting something, leaving something out, not telling you something, right? Like it's like for Christmas every year, everyone's expected to lie to their kids about Santa Claus. I mean, the majority of people. And then there's all these movies and TV shows, extensive effort. The Red One now coming out. These movies about something that doesn't exist, right? And every year I show you that the NORAD, the North American, whatever it is, they're in charge of the airspace. It's a part of the Air Force, which again is pivotal in the whole thing with UFOs. Is they have this thing of they track Santa Claus around the globe, and they show you this fake graphic of Santa going around, and they have all these people coming in and working and doing whatever they're doing to make this stupid thing. But every year they do it, and I show you it because at Christmas, because it shows you that they're willing to participate in a deception. And you fill in, you make up all this shit to fill in the holes of a story or change the story completely, right? So let's say aliens impregnated or genetically manipulated, not impregnated, but genetically manipulated chimpanzees and created human beings, human slaves to be workers here, which would have to happen because there's only so many people and robots and things you would be able to take with you on a spaceship, right? And so if you're harvesting resources, gold or any kind of things on this planet, right, you come down to the planet and you're coming from a far distance away, and you're limited to whatever you can bring with you on the spaceship, and you need workers, then you would have to create workers, right? Like the apes wouldn't be able to, they're not quality slaves, so you'd have to upgrade the apes to something else. And we know about genetic manipulation now because we're doing it. People are putting together spider goats, right? They were trying to create the milk of the goats to have some kind of like the webs of the spiders and things, like putting these different types of genomes in various creatures, hybrid creatures, right? And so, if they're doing that, we're doing that, then why wouldn't there be other beings that have done that in the past? And so if the origin of our species, at least the human beings that are present now on planet Earth, was a combination of extraterrestrial DNA with apes or whatever whatever it was, right? It would be apes. And there was this fusing of the chromosome, like, this idea about that, which I've talked about in past videos. Well, that would change everything, right? That would just, change everything. It would just change it. And so there's evidence to support this. The spiritual, the Whispers from the Brighter World channeled books from this French woman. One of the messages talks about that human beings came from test tubes. And there's all this evidence that, Lloyd Pye and these other people, you can find it on the internet describing these, genetic anomalies in human beings that would make sense that they were, that these creatures would make a slave. That's why there's a lot of genetic problems, diseases like spina bifida and things like that, that, the people who have it can't impregnate, they can't get pregnant, they can't reproduce. And so the disease should die off, right? There are diseases that when you have it, you don't have kids, and yet they're just floating around in our genome, and they come up like some kind of, chromosomal disorders, right? That are genetic disorders. Why are there people of like giants, and why are there little people, that are completely different than the normal human beings, right? Like you have people that are bigger or smaller, significantly so. So there are these different things that exist in the human genome. Why is that, right? Like, was there interbreeding between different kind of human species or whatever? And so you start leaving out stories, and then there's evidence that there's something going on, and they're not a part of the lie that they're telling you, and so they have to make up stuff, to compensate for the fact that they're leaving out big chunks of human history.
I will now recognize myself for 5 minutes of questioning.
Recognize yourself. Recognize the shit out of yourself, Ms. Mays.
I have a lot of questions, and I have a lot of witnesses. So I would just ask if it's yes or no to please just tell me yes or no. If it requires more than that, be very succinct, because I would like to go down the line and ask as many questions as possible. So for the Admiral this morning first, former DOD official Chris Mellon reached out to you about satellite imagery from 2017 that depicts a UAP. What were the dates in 2017 when this occurred?
I can't share with you the details, ma'am, but I can do it in a closed setting, and I can also tell you the age.
So they keep on saying they can go in a closed setting and tell you these things. What good is that? So all this stuff, the fact that there's classified things means that they're lying to the shit out of you, right? Why is that classified? Like, how is that about national security, right? How is that, privileged information? Like, why would they withhold that from the people? Unless, if you came out and said all the things that you would tell the people, and the people are like, oh, you guys aren't the authority. There's actually people that can kick the shit out of us. That have technology that they could just wipe us out. And so you guys are no longer the authority, and you can't protect us. There's an apex predator out there that's, and they don't have to be predatorial. They're probably not if they're, they would just come down and say, hey, give us your shit, and, or we'll like blast you. You guys are our slaves, and there's nothing you can do about it, because there's nothing we could do about it, right? Like, there would be that level, unless there's, backdoor conversations and things. And our governments are, talking to these, in communication with these beings, and these beings are running things, right? Which would, okay, well then why are we even voting then, right? If you're being told what to do by these, extraterrestrials or whatever, or you're being handled in some way. So, like, it's just, why is that classified, right? It's not because they're protecting America. It's not like divulging these secrets make it America more vulnerable to foreign governments or something. It's that the American people would no longer be acquiesced to being, the slaves that they are now, like, work slaves and slaves to a government and a money that was meaningless.
Agency that wrote a report on it.
Okay, so who has the imagery?
I can tell you that in a closed setting.
Can you describe what was depicted in the satellite imagery? Just a description.
It was a UAP, ma'am.
That's it? No other description?
Why call them UAPs when they're UFOs forever? Like, just fucking stick with something. Like, even that's bullshit, right? Even that's bullshit.
The term that the analysts use, they call it the
Unidentified anomalous phenomena. Unidentified flying objects. Who gives a shit, right? Like, just stick with a fucking name. Like, now we have to adjust to this. Oh, you guys got a secret name that we don't. Now we get the real name. Unidentified anomalous phenomena.
the button. It was a disc-shaped object.
Okay, where was it?
I can't tell you that, ma'am.
Okay.
Well, why? New York City? Like, why can't you tell her that?
All right. Okay, Mr. Elizondo, you state in your testimony that, quote, advanced technologies not by our government or any other government are monitoring sensitive military installations around the globe, end quote. If these technologies are not made by any government, who's making them? Private companies, or are you implying they are crafted by a non-human intelligence?
Well, ma'am, that's precisely why we're here. The problem is that, temporally speaking, over decades, not just the last 10 years, to put this in perspective,
Are these private companies you're implying, or is this non-human intelligence?
It may be both.
Okay.
When it comes to Blue Force Technologies, I would not be able to discuss
Okay.
that.
Well, either one of those things is bad. Companies are monitoring military installations. You know, companies at some point will be able to, this is like another, version of fascism, where companies become governments. Like companies would have weapons. Like companies would have nuclear weapons or something. So it would be a company that doesn't have a particular country, like it's all over the globe, and has weapons, has satellite weapons and things like that. There was a shitty movie, I think it was called Aloha, and it was about that, like the they were putting satellites with a payload of nuclear missiles up there that would be owned by a company, and that they would be able to be a nuclear power or something, right? And then, if it's extraterrestrials that are watching our military development, you would think that that has to do with, okay, you guys are now a threat. So you guys are going to weaponize space. We're going to have to put you down, right? Like, so these are both kind of important things.
Are you read into secret UAP crash retrieval programs?
We would have to have a conversation in a closed session, ma'am. I signed documentation 3 years ago that restricts my ability to discuss specifically crash retrievals. I submitted for my book through the DOPSR process, which took a year for it to be reviewed. And what is in the book is what I was told I'm allowed to talk about.
Has the government conducted secret UAP crash retrieval programs, yes or no?
Yes,
Okay, were they designed to identify and reverse engineer alien craft, yes or no?
yes.
Does the U.S. government have any reverse, okay, we already answered that question about retrieval programs. Do any U.S. contractors have the same?
I would prefer to address that in a closed session, ma'am.
Okay. In your book, you mentioned government employees who've been injured by UAPs placed on leave and receiving government compensation for their injuries. Is that correct?
That is correct.
How can the government deny we have recovered craft if they're paying people because they've been injured by recovered craft?
Ma'am, that's a great question. That's why I think we're
Yeah, because they, just like, again, they're liars, right? Like everything's a fucking lie. These are substantial lies, right?
here again because I've seen the documentation by the U.S. government for several of these individuals who have sustained injuries as a result of a...
the idea that there's life on some other planet. If they found life, Mars is too cold or whatever, or Trump was talking about Mars. But like he doesn't know what the fuck, whatever. He was on Joe Rogan. Yeah, we're going to go to Mars and get life, and Joe Rogan's like, well, we kind of know there's nothing up there. But there are, these beings, and this is referenced in the Whispers of the Brighter World book, that are spiritual in nature. Like all the plants around us have, entities, spiritual entities that are, they can move through time and space differently because they don't have the restriction of a body because they're, soul beings, right? That, maybe when we're dead, like that's, part of people's, their soul's work, right? Like you go and you become a soul and you're stationed at a particular, whatever planet and whatever it might be. But that would be acknowledging that there's life forms that are not biologics. And that would, again, open things up, spiritual essences, right? Because then you're getting into ghosts and all these other things. And so there's all this stuff that they're, these guys are all hinting exists. And it changes everything because it changes the nature of human life. And the biggest part for them is acknowledging that we're not the top of the food chain, that there are people that are beings that are more advanced than us in one way or another. And so the arrogance of what we're doing here, this manifest destiny that comes from biblical thought and then science saying, we're the highest level created beings or whatever. And if that wasn't true, then it would put us in a completely different position when we're doing things, right? That we're no longer, we have something to answer. We have a higher authority to answer to. Whether it be God, it's always going to be God. But also, because there's soul energy, then there's a proof of divinity. And these beings that are etheric in nature would have a higher level of consciousness than we would. They wouldn't be less evolved, right? And so they would know things on a spiritual level because they're not limited to a human body. And then if there were these higher developed technological creatures, they would be also, above us in whatever capacity because part of what our greatness is we can kick the shit out of any species and we can bulldoze and, take our machines and restructure and claim land and, dominate, like we dominate. And if we no longer could dominate, that would affect everything in American life, human life, and these things.
UAP incident.
It's a crazy idea, right? The hypocrisy and the logic. Okay, Mr. Schellenberger, I'm going to say it again to be very clear. Immaculate Constellation. What's its mission and how are they funded?
Its mission is to, as I stated, its mission is to, it's an unacknowledged special access program. Its mission is to document UAPs.
Okay, and do you, for your story and your report, do you have more than one credible source?
I do.
Sourcing, okay.
I do.
And then why do you believe your sources to be credible? How do you judge the veracity of the documentation you've been provided about this program?
I checked the sources, and they are who they say.
Her questions are really good. Like she's going through it.
They are current or former government officials. I wanted to also add that I did not specify that they were Defense Department employees. I didn't specify the agency nor the gender.
Would they have included non-government employees, people that aren't employed by the government?
I'm comfortable saying that these are government or previously government employees.
Any of them currently employed by a private contractor or private contractors?
I'd rather not say.
Okay, that means that there are private companies that are involved in this, right? That have access to classified information.
What's the key takeaway, just a few seconds, about the Immaculate Constellation document you provided us today?
I think that what the American people need to know is that the U.S. military and intelligence community are sitting on a huge amount of visual and other information, still photos, video photos, other sensor information, and they have for a very long time. And it's not those fuzzy photos and videos that we've been given. There's very clear
High res?
high resolution.
How many visuals, graphics, videos, photos?
I mean, I've been told hundreds, maybe thousands. I mean, I also wanted to say, because there was some.
Every time a UFO is seen, especially now with phones, there's a video of it.
Conversation around concern around the revealing of these materials, revealing the source collections, but some of these are shot from helicopters using normal videos of oceans. I just think that's absurd that somehow you're going to be revealing some secret U.S. technology by revealing that you've photographed orbs off the coast of Kuwait.
Okay, thank you. I have 8 seconds. Mr. Gold, did the NASA Independent Study Team get briefed on what you call OSAP? Very quickly.
I flagged the Advanced Aerospace Weapons System Classification Program to our chair and our DFO. We did not get briefed.
What's going on here?
But I believe it is definitely worth looking into. That was probably the largest UAP review effort ever, and I think produced a lot of interest data, including revealing Nimitz. I don't know if my fellow witness, Lou, might want to. He did yeoman's work on it, might want to comment.
He did yeoman's work. So years ago when I lived in Virginia, there was I want to say they were a hippie couple, but they were, not goofy. And I'm not sure what my family and their family relationship was, but we went over to these people's house, and they had a lot of cool things they were doing on their farm. They had a lot of neat things that they were, doing, and they were very, stable people. They weren't they came from the boomer hippie generation, but they were like real farmers that were producing real food, and they were reasonable people, interesting people. And they said, both of the couple said they'd seen this UFO, like a monster ship. They felt weird, like we're outside with a bunch of people. And they heard this noise, like some kind of mechanical noise, and they looked up, and there was like a huge spaceship, like just huge. It was going slowly over them. It was late at night. They were having whatever it was. And like everyone there saw it. Like they were all like, what the fuck was that, right? And it, had lights and, whatever it was. And, when you hear something like that, and these people are completely believable, you believe them. And I'm always someone who believes in all this stuff, right? Like I don't think some of the things might be goofier than others, like harder to believe. Like Bigfoot, for example. And I was like a kid, I was into Bigfoot. It's just, there was lots of land out there. There'd be, I think, more evidence. But it's still, anything's possible, any of these things, because I know the people who run the system are liars. But even with my knowledge, and even with, things I believe in my spiritual experiences that are quite substantial, my experiences with the soul, with my personal soul and the essence and the spiritual energy, years of meditating, my experiences are quite substantial. And then the writings become, the work of the organization, the Sajmark mission that I belong to, is very believable. And there's whispers messages about giants, right? There's whispers messages about extraterrestrials and things like this, saying that they built the pyramids. And then there's these TV shows about how aliens built the pyramids, and that the technology to build the pyramids we don't have now and have never possessed, except when they built the pyramids. Like in the history of human beings, the only evidence that people had that kind of level of technology and architectural, know-how to build those pyramids was the fact that they're there. Otherwise, it would be like, if there were rumors that there were these buildings like this, no one would believe they exist, because we can't do it with all of our equipment now, with all our cranes, with all our, millions of dollars of power equipment that we can move earth movers like bulldozers and, backhoes and things like this, and all the, the cranes that we lift large objects, and the skyscrapers that we've built. We could not build the pyramids now the way they were constructed. We're not even close. And if we did build them, they would be sloppy and not even anything as prolific as they are now, right? So let me switch over to the whispers of the brighter world. These are messages given by this French woman who was an invalid, a woman who suffered severe accident when she was younger, and she was kind of a shut-in, and she was a person who was a medium, like a high-level medium who had been a medium in past lives, and she had, been able to do this kind of work. Now, you can believe this or not. I'm just telling you what the backstory is. And there's all these prophecies and predictions. I'm going to read them probably towards the end of this year. And this is, Sunday, March 4th, 2001, 8 a.m. And when she had to do some of these messages, she had no reference point. She wasn't a truther. She didn't have that kind of attitude. She came from a rich family in France, and she doubted her own medium abilities. There's like 20,000 of these messages, and a lot of times she's expressing doubt and certainly freak out, like when some of these things are coming through. Like she wasn't a person who would be into doing this kind of research and was like this kind of a mindset like many of us have. Sunday, March 4th, 2001, 8 a.m. The Earth's history is both very ancient and rich. It has some advanced civilization. Extraterrestrials, as you call them, came to establish exploration sites and to build interplanetary relay stations. Some of them survived, even though they're not having their primary usefulness anymore. The pyramids belong to them. Many things are said and written about them. They still play an important role energy-wise. Revelations on this point will bring a new enlightenment to men of the future ages. The time has not come yet. Could they really understand all the subtleties of the system? They should at least start admitting that life exists on the planets of the solar system and beyond. It will really be necessary to hit hard so they can accept this principle. A massive invasion will occur. We already mentioned that possibility, which alone will put an end to the wandering of all forces of science. The whole picture will need revising. These beings will bring an extraordinary knowledge that will leave the poor earthlings stupefied with their pompous ideas and everything, most of which are wrong and worthless. These beings will come in order to protect the universal balance for man's misconduct, as well for the huge risks that they're running with their so-called progress, which is alarming in many respects, Babaji. So he's talking about scientific progress, but also the moral degradation is part of that as well. And that human beings will have to be kept in check, because we've been given a lot of this technology that we've been given. My brother used to always say, because my brother has been into this for years, 20, 30, 50 years ago, whatever. He was kind of a truther, but also somebody who was into extraterrestrial stuff. And he used to say, who invented the light bulb? And he would be like Thomas Edison. Who invented the phone? Alexander Graham Bell, these other things. Who discovered gravity? Newton, right? These people who are attributed with these scientific breakthroughs. Who discovered the microchip? like the computing age, where did that come from? And they have, some kind of stories about these companies. But if somebody had to invent it, right, somebody has to be credited with an invention. And, what would make more sense is they found a microchip and they reverse engineered it. And these silicone chips and all this stuff that we have now, because we've advanced so quickly. In the 1900s, they just were introducing shitty automobiles. I mean, or just a little bit over 100 years ago. I mean, there was the Great Depression. Go look at what it was like in the 1920s, and look at where we are technologically. Electricity was just starting, right? So I looked it up, and here it is. These things, electricity, the first light bulb, 1879. These all things came together. First car, Volkswagen in Germany, 1885. And so when they started to produce these things was in the early 1900s, when people had access to them. So the invention came, and then production came years later, right? And so the first aircraft, the Wright brothers, was in 1903. Of course, we wouldn't have regular airplanes and flying, machines till the 20s and 30s, right? And then, of course, the 40s, when it changed warfare. And then first telegraph, we had these telegraph wires, was in 1816, and the first telephone was in 1876. And so, these things became popular. Telephones weren't really started to be used till years later. And they had to lay down all the phone lines, first the telegraph wires and things like that, right? And we had trains, and we had all this type of, you go back, you look at these primitive cars that they had, right? You look at the cars that were produced in the 1900s. So 100 years ago was when all this stuff started to happen. And now we have computers. We're walking around with computers in our pockets, right? A huge technological advancement during that period of time. And because they've reverse engineered shit that was given to them, right? It wasn't like this all, the huge leap. Because before that, it was like, all these things that didn't exist, right? The plumbing wasn't there, even for really rich people. I mean, these kings and queens and these, royal people, they didn't have any of those things. Just 120, 130 years ago, none of these things existed. And now look at what's available. So there's another Whispers message. Saturday, February 10th, 2001. Secret of the ancient Egypt will be unearthed when the moment has come and the major significance of all existing symbols can finally be understood by most of the people, which is not the case for today's civilization. Most of the people, that means that there's people who have this knowledge, the Freemasons and some of these other groups. They have this knowledge that's kept from the rest of us. Higher spirits in the terms of level of evolution are not far from that comprehension. They work out key elements of those mysteries, which will help explain one day the true history of the world. The Earth, as far as its functioning is concerned, can be compared to a living being with strong points or chakras, which maintain a balance essentially to its life and evolution. Men, by their ignorance, endanger the future of the world by disorganizing what the higher race worked out a long time ago. The human beings, on the pretext of progress, destabilizes not only the life of the planet, but also its attributes in the universal order. The race of giants is a reality. It influenced very deeply the history of the earth, which is recorded in certain sacred places of the sphere, many of which are in the country of Egypt. The majority of those places are not yet explained by human beings. For the greatest good of all, men must be protected against themselves, as they are not able, in the current state of knowledge, to decipher what was deciphered for the survival of the future of the world. Babaji. Babaji is the second master of Sarge Mark's system, who died in 1983, and he started to give these messages to this French woman in the 1990s. Here's the last one I want to read here. This one is Sunday, March 4th, 2001, 10 a.m. My dear daughter, he would call her his daughter, the medium. Concerning these prophecies, you must write what we dictate without having any qualms. You cannot check the soundness of what we are telling you. Some of our comments confirm assertions you've read from other sources, which themselves include some of ours. The best inspired ones have written by mediums having access to well-informed sources. Great upheavals occurred on this planet time and time again. They made life evolve in various forms. Terrifying species inhabited the planet that screenwriters of science fiction movies cannot even imagine. The humanoid kingdom is rather recent. It was not about spontaneous generation, but it was experimentally generated by superior beings and has evolved with time. Present researchers whose eyes are riveted on test tubes would be astounded if they discovered the true reality of mankind. There is no question here of an upper race as they are. The sub-race tries to work its way up to the upper level with God's help. There is every hope of success. There's a lot to do. All kinds of committed persons have devoted themselves to it. Eden will not happen in a hurry, but a high-level embryonic consciousness is germinating and growing in this world, so as to reach a possible full blossoming in the very distant future, Babaji. And so this was a part of the prophecies that talk about, all these upheavals that are about to happen, the restructuring of the planet, and then the genetic manipulation of people, a mutation of people, not manipulation, where they'll rise up to a higher level, like this is what's predicted. And so, there's a need for something, like something's got to happen. And you can see where people are lost, because when you lie to them about the origin of their species, but also the origin of your soul and your soul's purpose, and you manipulate people and you enslave them and you get them to do your bidding by withholding information that would change the trajectory of their lives. If they had this information, they would look at the world differently, and they would look at their lives differently, and they wouldn't be as easy to subjugate. And so that's been the problem with people in the top of the system, but also people on the lower levels who deep down know that it's not, that what they're being told isn't true, and they go along with it, which is the majority of people have a sense that it's all bullshit, but then act as gatekeepers to keep the bullshit going, right? And so this is all that's happening. And now they're starting to divulge certain things, not in a real way. Oh, yeah, we can tell you that behind closed doors and whatever. And they're going to use it manipulatively, just like with, say, climate change. Pollution is real, but the climate change agenda is about making money and using it to profit off of, right? Almost everything that they do has some kind of profit situation or some kind of control situation. We're fighting off the aliens, so let's all come together, like some kind of, bullshit way to keep them in power by divulging more information that they've been lying to you about for years. And then it's just like, okay, you've been lying to us, but it's good you're finally telling us the truth. Well, how do you know they're telling you the truth now, right? Because they're liars. They've been lying for centuries, and they've withheld key information that has affected the trajectory of this planet in a negative way. Anyways, speaking of which, let's get into these dick pills here. I just want to add one more little thing to this, just, caveat. See, I don't care about what people believe, and I don't care what people think about my beliefs, right? Like, people think that I want their opinion about my beliefs, and I'm like, my beliefs are fluid, and they've changed, and as new information has come in, and, just even like becoming a truther in 2005 or whatever it is. I mean, always been a little bit of a truther. Becoming spiritually, I guess, awakened in 2000 or 1993. That was significant change in my understanding of the world. And that developed, it was not an immediate epiphany. I mean, there was an epiphany, an experience that led to all these, information, either through, information that came through either through my meditation practice or the literature of the Sajmark system, and my understanding of the nature of a human life and the soul and the life of the soul. I mean, there's more information about the journey of the soul and your soul's purpose and spiritual aspect of life and a relationship with the divinity within you in the Sajmark literature, and it pales in comparison to the experiences you have, which are much more important. Because you can read about shit in books, but experiencing those things are much more important. And these whispers of the brighter world messages, I just had an exchange with this guy called the Dodgy Truther. There's this guy Dodgy who took over. Wasn't took over. He was given the position of master, and the position of master isn't really a real position, but it's the president of the Sri Ramchandra mission, which is Saj Marg, which is the meditation that I do. And then he turned it into this heartfulness cult, except he's too stupid and too clumsy to run a real cult. So it's a cult wannabe, and it's a disaster for all these people who have done the practice for years, whether they're aware of it or not. Huge fall off. I mean, it's went from something that was wonderful to something that's not only just bad, but like goofy and just stupid. And there's a guy there, there's a bunch of people there, and there's one guy in particular that I call the Dodgy Truther. And he's one of the people that's out there talking about what a piece of shit Kamlesh is. And he sends me information, like recently the SEC going after Kamlesh's son for $170 million of investor fraud, embezzlement or whatever. That Kamlesh's pharmacies, like this guy who runs Dodgy's pharmacies, were, created this business, right? I've talked about this in other videos. They forged and inflated the value of their business according to the SEC complaint and stole, whatever you want to call that, defrauded people out of $170 million of investor money. Somebody invested like $80 million based in faulty data, right? Which is a problem. And then they absconded with the money to India, right? This is supposed to be a spiritual leader. But this guy, the Dodgy Truther, does not like the Whispers books. And he listened to a recent video of mine, and he was telling me, why Whispers is fake. Like this French woman, this whole thing. There's people who don't like it, that do my meditation, right? But the third master of the system, he had trouble accepting it because he wanted or thought he was going to be clairvoyant or was going to be a medium himself. It turned out he just didn't have the time and the sort of like the spiritual proclivity to do that. But at first he had trouble accepting it, and then once he accepted it, he loved these books, and he published these books in beautiful format, these wonderful, like, beautiful books, 5 of them, and then collected, many more messages that haven't been published yet, right, or whatever they are. But there are people who love these books, and I was one of them, and I had spiritual experiences, and a lot of the stuff I do as a truther comes out of me validating things that were said in the books, right? There's truther stuff in the books about all kinds of things, about electromagnetic pollution, which is Wi-Fi and all these things, and what it does to your subtle bodies and to your, you said your glands are like the guardians of your body, your various glands in your body, and they have an effect that modern day medicine doesn't know about, and that this electromagnetic poisoning in modern day life is so hard on these parts of your body that are also at spiritual centers, right? Interesting shit like that. And, a lot of stuff that has to do with truther stuff, money power. He uses the phrase money power in these messages. And I started doing research on these things at the same time as I started to become aware of the truther narratives about the big event, 9/11 in 2001, and all these other things, right? There was an interesting message about it where he, says, wake up if you're not awakened. I'll cover that when I read the prophecies. Like, I'll start off with that maybe, if I can remember to do that. Hopefully I will. People can remind me if they're interested around the time I do the prophecies. And so if I don't do it, then I can follow up with a video I'd like about that. But my becoming a truther is connected to these Whispers books. And then I got really sick and was going through a crisis. And I was basically had to fast. And I was reading these Whispers books, one of them like the 5th edition. And I read it on a completely different level. Like my consciousness went to a much higher level. And I can't reach that level right now, so I can't really even do justice. But it was like I referenced that book and movie Flowers for Algernon, which is sort of about this, right? Like where you just penetrate to a higher level of consciousness. There was a guy who had mental disabilities and a mouse called Algernon, and they were given this drug, and the mouse became like the world's smartest mouse, and the guy became the world's smartest man, and then the mouse dies. And then the man knows that he's going back to being like a mentally, challenged person. But for a little bit, he penetrated to a higher level, and like that happened with me. But why I'm saying all this is people are always going to have different opinions about things, even on an organizational level. And you might agree on some things, like me and this guy agree that Dodgy's a piece of shit, but we totally disagree on Whispers. And, I don't understand his position at all, and I don't care. But he decided to, lecture me about my position, so I sent him a voiceover, which I've now included in a Journey series. Like, he hasn't responded back to me. It's not like we're close or we really know each other. But you have this with people in your life. Truthers have battles over, like, little details and things. And, I just don't give a shit about any of that stuff because we're always learning new things. We're always changing our opinion. If you're not doing that, the right-wing truthers never do that. The Cubies, they have a fixed mindset, and they have a fixed template, and they just say the same bullshit over and over again for years. They're not evolving. They're not developing. They're fixated on something. People get fixated, like the flat earthers, the ones that get fixated on just that, and that's all they think about, or the Pizzagate people, or the you got to be flexible and realize you're not going to know things for sure. And when you start thinking you know things for sure, you're screwed, right? And so what I will say about this, though, is I've been one of the first ones in a lot of these different areas. I was like the first one to talk about cloning, or one of the first truthers saying that if they can clone an animal, they can clone humans. And so I did lots of videos about that, but I recognized that there's things we didn't know. But what I knew, based in what's available in terms of technological data, is they can't clone somebody and stop them from developing, like clone them where they clone the person and they grow to 70 in 3 months, 70 years old. And then they take the clone out and they replace like Joe Biden with the clone. Like, they don't have the technology for that because, you have to go through developmental milestones. And if you were a 70-year-old clone, if they could expedite the growing process, which they can't do. Cloning right now is taking cells, either, a cell from, or taking a cell from like a dog and then putting it in an like embryo type format in another female dog. And that dog gives birth to the cloned dog. So if they're going to clone your dog, it would just go through a natural birthing process. It's just the way they inseminate the pregnant mother with cloned embryo instead of a regular, impregnated egg and, sperm and things like that. And so it follows this same, and then the clone is born like a baby. It's not, they don't have accelerated. But there's all this bullshit that people were claiming, and they were trying to tell me about it. And I'm like, I was here before you were. Like, again, I'm not all that into the cloning thing, but, I researched this stuff for years and I covered it. And I have a logical mind and, practical mind. And you're just talking about bullshit because somebody said something, you saw a video, and you bought into it without thinking about it because you don't have the capacity for critical thinking, right? And more importantly, that's just one example. But I've seen this over and over again where there are people who resist something. Like my brother didn't like the Whispers books. And then years later, he started telling me about them. And I'm like, I've been here for years, bro. Like, I'm way ahead of you because I've been doing this for years. You're a newbie. You just started. Like, I already knew about these things. You rejected it at first, and now you're telling me about it when I've been here for, like, this is the thing that people do. And there are people who have rejected the truther narratives and pushed back against them. And then all of a sudden they wake up and they start telling you how it is, right? And you're like, well, I've been doing this for years, and you're back in stage one where I was 10 years ago. But this is how people are, right? And like, that's why I say I don't get into any of this stuff, because I can't, I can't bring people. I mean, sometimes some of it is just you got to put some time into it. And you have to develop. You have to always be flexible and open to what's possible and, all these things. But the big thing about this thing with UFOs is they've been lying to you about it, and they're now admitting it. They've been lying to you years. Just for them saying, I can't tell you here. I can't let the mob know. I can't let the freaking sheeple and the people, the masses know. But since you're a congresswoman or whatever, I can talk to you behind closed doors. But I can't give you that answer in public because they're not allowed to know about, something that would change everything, right? It would change their whole perspective on everything. All these religions, all these, scientific, bullshit they've put out would be changed by the knowledge of the true origin of our species. And that information has already been put out there, you know, in the Whispers of the Brighter World and these other places in this, you know, this, you know, whatever it is, these books and, you know, the literature and the knowledge, the base that's there, but also in other places scientifically and things like this. And people should pay attention, like there are people who have been doing this stuff for years that are aware of these things and have thought about them and have gone through a whole process that you're just starting, right? And like, you know, if you're just starting something, you're not a fucking expert. Just because you've had an epiphany, and it's good you had one, and it's good that you have enthusiasm, but, you know, sometimes you just shut up and listen, right? And that's what people don't do. Like, people immediately think they're experts on something they rejected a year ago, right? So anyways, just thought I'd add that. Let's get back to the dick pills here. So here's the counter argument, right? So I saw this Bluechew commercial I covered in my last video. But then there was another one last night in maybe the basketball game I had a Charlotte's Hornets was playing Detroit Pistons, and for whatever reason I decided to I guess the Charlotte Hornets have been playing better, and they got an announcer for the Charlotte Hornets. I watched him years ago, the Charlotte Hornets basketball team, but they've had some injuries. And the announcer was crazy. Like he would yell out, like just he was over the top, and it made it kind of enjoyable to watch, right? But I taped this game, and it was Charlotte's Hornets, and they had the local announcer. It was on like NBA TV, and you know I was not sure I was going to watch it, but I ended up watching the end. It was like an overtime game that was kind of epic. I watched the end of it, but in the beginning they had this commercial. So this is a follow up. And they're using this format. So this is targeted for young people, which you can see, right? About these dick pills, right?
You know what Bluechew is? You could boost your numbers if you took it.
Never heard of Bluechew.
Boost your numbers? Actually, this is not the one I saw last night. You can boost your numbers. What do you mean boost your numbers? Like, what do you mean by numbers? What numbers are we talking about here that Bluechew will help you boost them?
Bluechew? Yeah, you know Bluechew?
Yeah, it sounds like chewable tablet things like...
This is a commercial I saw.
Oh, girl, how do you know Bluechew?
Her man.
Come on.
And it made you like him more, right?
Absolutely.
They made him like you more because he needs a pill to get aroused by you. So he can't, you know, it's not the pill. It's not you or your, you know, his attractiveness to you. It's the pill that's making him aroused. So it's either he's no longer attracted to you, and he cannot no longer perform his sexual duties whatever, because of his attraction. So he needs a pill to help him. Or he has low testosterone as a young man and can't achieve this on his own because he's, you know, bonus hole and he's grown up in this, you know, feminized world where they're putting out these various chemicals and various, you know, whatever, 5G and all these things that are making it difficult for young men to be able to perform their sexual function, right? So neither one of those things would make you like him more. You know, either he's broken in some way or he's no longer attracted to you. He needs a pill, right?
Or you could. Where do I get Bluechew?
Oh, you want to know where you can get it now? Well, you can go online and get your first month free, actually, so.
Okay, I mean, can't say no to free month.
Would you date him
Can't say no to the free month.
if he took a Bluechew?
I would have to go with a yes.
Look, you're in it, my boy. My boy.
Woo! So that was a commercial they showed last night. And they're targeting young people because when I searched for this, Theo Vaughn came up, and he is like a comedian that's doing his own podcast. He had Kennedy on. He's associated with Joe Rogan, and he has a young audience, probably mostly a young male audience. And one of his sponsors was apparently Bluechew. So this guy,
What were you saying? Yeah, fucking Bluechew, baby. Time to chew your way into just wiener wonderland. That's what it is, baby. Chomp on that little chewable. And next thing you know, baby, you got that dang flag post, Bubba.
and so he's selling his soul here for Bluechew. So this is targeted for young men, which is disturbing, right? Because that means that there's lots of young men out there that are suffering some sort of erectile dysfunction. Now, we've talked about physical things. We've talked about the reduction of testosterone. You know, there's this stuff that they've put out there that's illegal in Europe, atrazine. You know, it is Surgenta, this company, and it's sprayed on playgrounds, right? We know about 5G and these things. We know about COVID. We know about the bloop and all those things that could negatively affect, you know, the cardiovascular system, the nervous system. We know men have been, you know, targeted by not just men, but, you know, young people by porn now for years on the internet, which is desensitizing them to, you know, real romantic, positive, loving relationships, right? And then all the other things that are involved here. The demonizing of men, the like cutting off the nuts of men, like this whole thing where, you know, men are evil, this kind of feminist agenda. And so there's a lot of stuff going against young men now, not being able to get dates, these things, all this stuff. And so they're having problems here, physically, psychologically, atmospherically, whatever it is, right? A combination of all those things. And so the solution is to take these pharmaceutical medications, which, you know, you're going to be addicted to them for the rest of your life. Because if you're taking those things now as a young person, that problem ain't getting better. And so once you've gone over that side, even as an older person, you know, there's natural things you can do. You know, any of these things, the physical stuff, there's blood flow issues and testosterone issues, right? They're two separate things. Like, I think Viagra is a blood flow thing. Whereas, you know, watermelon is like a natural, you know, some of these things, nitric oxide, there's these various, you know, components that's supposed to boost your nitric oxide and your blood flow, right? Because it was a heart medication. But then there's also things to increase your testosterone. And there's natural supplements and things that you can do, exercise, whatever it is, right? To, you know, like as you get older, you don't have as much blood flow because you're not exercising the same way. And your testosterone goes to lower levels. But this shouldn't be the case for young men, but now they're on the internet for so long, all these things, right? Which, you know, this is happening. And so it's kind of funny, but it's also really disturbing. And I want to contrast this with the UFO thing, because this makes total sense why they can't tell people shit, because this is where we are as a species. And they're pushing these ads out. And I found a bunch of them. I'm going to show you. They seem funny, but I didn't watch all of them. So let's go through them here.
Attention, guys.
Why are we whispering? Why is this a secret? You're on the internet. Why are you whispering?
Do you want to change your sex life in the best possible way?
Is the best possible way taking a pharmaceutical pill? You know, they have these slutty dressed girls who are young and, you know, who are trying to be provocative. And they have this idea that these girls want you to do this, right? Like, you know, like.
Well, I have a secret for you. Bluechew.
Wait, we were no longer whispering? What happened? It's a secret? But you guys have lots of ads.
It's a stress-free online service that delivers their
What do you mean, stress-free?
chewable tablets directly to you. So, when you're ready to have a little fun, Bluechew is perfect for those time to chew moments.
What? What do you mean that? What does that mean, time to chew moments?
You can both thank me later.
Boom. So I guess she's maybe an influencer. There's a lot more here. Let's get to them. This is a video from Sam and Monica, and they are Bluechew partners. Came from their at Sam and Monica, but this is from Bluechew, their own YouTube channel.
Hi, honey.
Hi, beautiful.
Hello, beautiful.
So apparently, she's very excited because he has an erection. Again, I didn't watch some of these. These are great. And so he's videotaping her reaction, because it isn't because she's so beautiful or so attractive or he loves her so much. It's because he took some kind of pill, and so now she's happy because she'll settle for that, right? Like, you know, not that he's attracted to her or that she provoked this kind of reaction, but he's taken a pill and, you know.
And there's one more thing. I've taken a blue chew.
I will clear my calendar for the rest of the day. Oh my goodness.
Okay, it actually works, you guys. Because there's nothing that a woman wants to hear more than, hey, honey, look, I just took a dick pill. I'll clear my calendar then. Boom. So that's Sam and Monica.
To really work. Bro, you get a month for free.
Okay, so this is, they make it look like these are YouTube videos, but this is Bluechew's actual, their promotional YouTube page. User promo code YouTube, try Bluechew. They're really pushing this month for free thing, right? To say that, oh, it works and it'll show you. But that's what they do with drugs, right? When you first start doing drugs and you're resistant to doing them, a drug dealer will often give you drugs for free or get high with you or whatever it is, right? And once you start being addicted to it, and then it's like extraordinarily expensive. And I don't know what they charge for this stuff. But that's how the drug dealers work. They give you samples, and then they get you interested in the product, and then the product becomes really expensive. Right? And, now you're addicted to it.
For free. Try it. And you're going to like it. And your girl or man, boyfriend, whatever it is going to like it.
Boom. First month for free. Again, this is all targeted at young people. That's the fucked up thing here. I mean, that's not the only fucked up thing, but it's, first month for free. And so that's their thing.
That dress is turning me on.
It is?
Seeing you naked.
It is?
You feel me? So you know what I went to the car to get?
What? Oh.
Okay, so the dress is turning you on, except you need to get Bluechew. And then she's all excited. Oh, it is? It's turning you on? I'm sitting here like a prostitute leaned against this pole. Right? She's got the pole here. She's on the street in a seductive dress. And he's like, it's turning me on. It turned me on so much I had to go get my dick pills.
Oh, damn. Come on, people are watching.
People are watching. Let's put this on YouTube. Wait, what? People are watching. And it's like, look, I'm waving my dick pills out here in the middle of the public. I don't want everyone to see.
Oh, you don't care? Come over here.
Oh my God.
That dress is...
Okay, so this is really horrible.
Hey, baby. Hey, you want to hang out for a little bit?
I could use some help.
Oh, yeah, definitely. Okay, what about now? Oh, what the heck? Wait, what about the groceries?
Oh, forget the groceries.
Wait, babe.
Surprising my girlfriend with Bluechew.
He's surprising his girlfriend with Bluechew. It's called Bluechew Side Effects. And these commercials are really bad, but there's an evil intent here. Like, what do pharmaceutical companies want? The same thing that drug dealers want. The same thing, almost every business wants, is a customer for life, right? And so if you start taking these things and you no longer can achieve, erection on your own, without some kind of pharmaceutical drug, things don't work forever. Like there's a lessening of where they work, in the beginning. It's just like with any sort of a drug, you need to take more and more doses of it and these things, right? Then the side effects starting to mount. And there's a psychological effect to it, right? Where you start thinking that, without taking it, that you can't function, right? So the same thing with psychological medications and all the rest of these things, you become dependent on them. And then there's like almost like an addiction. Sometimes you get literally addicted to them. And this is bad, right? And the way that they're marketing these things to young people, young men, and, these fake, like, try to be organic videos and all these other things, right?
Bluechew has very bad side effects. If you didn't know, Bluechew is a popular male enhancement. I've done several videos on that. If you want something that works, subscribe to my channel. I'm gonna let you know what's safe to take.
I'm not gonna give you that information here, but you subscribe to my channel, and I'll give you the straight up information.
And something that will actually give you results. Bluechew does not work at all.
It doesn't work, and it's got side effects. Bluechew sucks. He's got real dick pill information here. Boom. So there's this. Clean the house or no Bluechew. Here he is, like this loser. He's got Chinese food sitting here. He's got a cooler, and he's playing video games. He's got his phone out. He's got his stuffed animal. He's got messy stuff here, all these things, pizza boxes. They try to make these funny, and they're not. Yeah, that's not exactly cleaning the house. Whoa. Oh. He did a good job. It's now they got it's the middle of the winter, and now there's a window that's missing. It's not. I'm trying to critique these commercials for the quality of their narrative. Happy Wife, Happy Life is the name of this one. Right? The thing about this is women like to feel special. We like to feel special, right? The little I know about women, but, women want to feel special. And your love for them, the way that the male system works, like I said, it takes two things, testosterone and blood flow. And Viagra was originally a heart medication because this is where your heart's involved, right? Where your heart rate goes up and your testosterone level is there, right? In terms of your desire for a woman, right? And so there's two things here. It's your testosterone level, but then also your heart. And that's why when people fall out of love and they become mundane and their relationship sucks, there is difficulties in either person, because the woman has her own reaction too, that also involves the heart. And so what they're doing, instead of having love and having, a heart reaction where your heart lights up being around somebody you love, right? Which makes, both people feel special, and the woman specifically. That you love her, and that's a part of your attraction. And the blood flow comes from that end of the thing, right? And, of course, there's physical things that you have to do as you get older, but not when you're younger, because you should have a high testosterone rate, and your heart should be working. Of course, now with the bloop and all the things that have gone on, there's heart issues. And so this is substitute for love, right? It's substitute for having a good heart. It's substitute for having a healthy heart and a loving heart. And that these women are getting excited about Bluechew because that represents what? It represents nothing in terms of them. It's just something that causes a reaction in your body. If it works, right, there's all these pills out there. I know there's a thing called Hims because they advertise all the time on Facebook. And I think they target my age group, but maybe they just target all men in general because of this issue, because of all these things that are going on to make it difficult for men to not only get aroused, but also to reproduce.
Babe, you need to get home now. A new order of Bluechew just came.
A new order of Bluechew came? I'm coming. I'm on my way.
So what is Bluechew your god now? This is so bad.
Babe, come home.
I got your Bluechew right here, ready for you.
Yeah, that's not good.
Oh my God.
Come and get it.
It's a slip and slide. There's a slip and slide. This is... That's disturbing. Like this is, I think I have one more commercial here.
It's me, your girl Lana.
It's our girl Lana. Lana Rhodes, Bluechew influencer, and this is a promo. This is the last one I'm covering here, but there's, I mean, hundreds more on their channel. And then they're now running these ads, like I said, during sporting events, at least in one basketball game and another basketball game or a football game. And they're running them like this, right, targeting young people. But she's a Bluechew influencer.
Bluechew is having a promotion. If you haven't heard of Bluechew, you are missing out. It's an online
You're missing out.
delivery service that delivers chewable tablets that make your erection harder, longer lasting, and stronger. The best part of going Bluechew is that everything is done online. No more visits to your doctor, no more waiting in long lines.
See, you're being paid for this, are you, Lana? Like, are you doing this out of the goodness of your heart, or you're being paid?
At the pharmacy, it's delivered straight to your door. And ladies, it's time to talk to your man about trying Bluechew because
Exactly, ladies. You got that limp dick boyfriend at home, and now it's time for you to go have the Bluechew talk.
anytime I see mine with one of these, I know it's going to be a good time.
Exactly, but I know if like even though I'm an influencer and I'm a model, that I couldn't produce this reaction myself. I spent hours a day on my appearance, and yet I need this kind of enhancement to generate that kind of response, because that's just the quality of men these days, right?
The tablets may not be for you, but it enhances the experience for everyone. Click the link and use my promo code. Chew it and do it, baby.
Chew it and do it. Lana. Promo code Lana. And so this is disturbing on a lot of levels. I just want to look something up here. So I started to search young men suffering, and I got to the first F, and the first suggestion was this. And I don't believe I've ever searched for this before. I know I've talked about this as being a post-COVID in my other channel issue, because it was very prevalent in the news or whatever it was, right? Which, of course, the heart issues that people are having post-COVID and more from the bloop, right? The treatment of the COVID and the effects on people's hearts and cardiac arrest and these things. I knew there would be this issue. But it says here, most likely caused by psychological problems in younger men. And then there's these various, articles about this, right? And why are so many young men suffering from ED? And they're saying it's psychological issues. And some of that's true, but some of it is environmental. Some of it has to do with their spending so much time on the computer. I'm sure that their hearts are in bad shape because they're not exercising. And then, low testosterone. And then, of course, the Wi-Fi, 5G now, all these things take a toll. There's a guy who was a microwave expert. He was some kind of British soldier. You can see his video somewhere. And he had said, they're using microwaves as weapons, like these energy wave weapons. And as soon as he found out they were putting Wi-Fi in schools, he knew that they would cause sterility, that these young men wouldn't be able to have kids because of what these energies do. So there's all these factors, the Sargento chemical, estrogen, what is it called? So they've made fun of conspiracy theorists and Alex Jones and people like that about these Sargenta turning frogs gay. The herbicide Sargenta, that is atrazine is the chemical that's in it, right? And which is illegal in Europe because of the side effects. And this is a liberal show with a liberal professor at Berkeley, California, Berkeley University.
You were originally tied to Syngenta, the research you did, and what prevented you from originally publishing it?
Well, here at Berkeley, I was a new assistant professor. I was already studying the effects of hormones and the effects of chemicals that interfere with hormones on amphibian development. And I was approached by the manufacturer and asked to study the effects of atrazine, the herbicide, on frogs. And after I discovered that it interfered with male development and caused males to turn into females to develop eggs, the company tried to prevent me from publishing and from discussing that work with other scientists outside of their panel.
What was the process with?
So think about that, right? So frogs are very sensitive creatures. But to turn a frog from a male to a female, that's a significant fucking powerful chemical, right? And you're spraying this in parks, and you're not even thinking about the frog population. I mean, you're talking about human beings, but this would be in, there was an herbicide that we were using in like school fields where they would play sports, and parks where kids would play and things like this, right? And it was already banned in Europe because they knew it was bullshit. And this guy did research. They end up threatening him. They end up harassing him. He ends up getting fired. I mean, all these things happen. And, you know, now you see that there's a pharmaceutical drug on the other side that's there to help men who have been, you know, damaged by these things.
Within the company, as you raised your findings, what was their immediate reaction to what you had come across?
Well, initially they seemed sort of supportive. We designed more studies, we designed more analysis, and they encouraged me to do more analysis. But as the further analysis just supported the original finding, they became less interested in moving forward very quickly, and eventually they moved to asking me to manipulate data or to misrepresent data, and ultimately they told me I could not publish or could not talk about the data outside of their closed panel.
And Professor Hayes, talk about exactly what you found. What were the abnormalities?
So, you know, this is, well, it's a little bit more of this. The video is called Silencing the Scientist. Tyrone Hayes, I'm being targeted by herbicide firm Syngenta.
You found in frogs, the gender-bending nature of this drug, atrazine.
Well, initially we found that the larynx or the voice box in exposed males didn't grow properly. And this was an indication that the male hormone testosterone was not being produced at appropriate levels. And eventually we found that not only were these males demasculinized or chemically castrated, but they also were starting to develop ovaries or starting to develop eggs. And eventually we discovered that these males didn't breed properly, that some of the males actually completely turned into females. So we had genetic males that were laying eggs and reproducing as females. And now we're starting to show that some of these males actually show, I guess, what we'd call homosexual behavior. They actually prefer to mate with other males.
And so where did you go with your research?
Well, eventually what happened was the EPA insisted that... the
Environmental Protection Agency.
Environmental Protection Agency insisted that the manufacturer release me from the confidentiality contract. And we published our findings in pretty high-ranking journals such as Proceedings of the National Academy of Sciences. We published some work in Nature. We published work in Environmental Health Perspectives, which is a journal...
These are all liberal magazines. This is a liberal issue. But the liberals are mocking this, right? Think about this. And
sponsored by the National Institutes of Health.
And when did you begin to get a sense that the company was organizing a campaign against you? What were the signs that you saw post the period when you published your findings?
Before we published the findings and before the EPA became involved, the company tried to purchase the data. They tried to give me a new contract so that they would then control the data and the experiments. They actually tried to get me to come and visit the company to get control of those data. And when I refused, I invited them to the university. I offered to share data, but they wanted to purchase the data. And then they actually, as mentioned in a New York article, they actually hired scientists to try to refute the data or...
Okay, so this is all the things I talk about here, right? It's well worth watching. And now we see effects, right? Where this was being covered. This is like a 20-year-old video. So this was, this was done, whenever it was. I'll see when it was published. But this is an old video. And this data was available. And since that time, it's been mocked. Stephen Colbert mocked Alex Jones for saying that things turn frogs gay or turn frogs into females. And, Alex Jones is being such a tool and piece of shit that he would sensationalize things and make it silly, right? And so that's what Alex Jones's role was in, promoting these things. And his fans would get it, but it would be off-putting and ridiculous to other people because Alex Jones showed himself to be a ridiculous shill, right? And so this is the outcome of all that stuff, where something that's banned in other countries because they know it does all these things is being promoted in America. And then we have all these issues, right? We have these issues with gender identity now and sexuality. And this is just one of the things, because I know that Wi-Fi and these other things also affect this. So it's assault on, and then there's all these things that boost estrogen in the system, things that suppress testosterone, phytoestrogens, and plastics. And, so there's been an accumulation of this. And now they have these blue pills because young men can't perform sexually. And they're selling these things. And, because of like all the effects of this, right? And there's psychological effects as well. What causes erectile dysfunction in younger men? Why you should not ignore erectile dysfunction? Prevalence of associated factors of moderate to severe erectile dysfunction among adult men in Malaysia. Young men need to feel more supported and connected. Erectile dysfunction symptoms and causes. Erectile dysfunction is far more common than you may realize. And so there's a couple of things here. There's the erectile dysfunction, but then there's also the quality and the level of, men's sperm count. And this is one of the ways. There's going to be depopulation. This is part of depopulation. And the best way to depopulate is, have these war of sexes, have women think that being a mother, demean motherhood, make women more masculine, make them angry at men, have this, have dysfunction in their relationships, thinking that being single and being child-free is a good thing, psychologically emasculate men, and then all these things that are done physically, and then, that women have trouble conceiving, men have trouble conceiving, women have trouble getting pregnant, right? And so this is, both physical things. The next thing you know, that the population is reduced significantly. And they've been doing this kind of shit for years, so this is a part of it. And here's the outcome, right? Okay, so I have a few weird, funny things viewers have sent me on Instagram. Whenever I have an Instagram video, somebody sent me it. But I just want to say it was 10 years ago that video was put up. I don't know how long ago they did that. So 10 years ago, they had this stuff with Syngenta and atrazine, and they haven't banned it, and it's still out there. It's been mocked, and now we see that there's these issues, right? And, I'm contrasting this idea that the government has withheld information and then where people are at. And some of that has to do with this, the dumbing down of humanity, but some of it is that humanity's just stupid, right? Like the people who control the system have a problem with emotionally, I don't want to use the R word, but mentally, underdeveloped and emotionally underdeveloped people who are, over-emotional, that sometimes don't use logic and reason and, crimes of passion and can turn into a mob, right? This is what the controllers have to deal with. Not that I feel sympathy for them, but it's a real problem because, they have to withhold information because people panic and they do stupid shit and they don't, And so is that because they've withheld information or because humanity isn't ready for it? You can look at both ways. Both things are true, right? The controlling of information has hurt people, and the people are not ready is also true. So both things are there. And so this is, well, let's just get into this. It's kind of hilarious.
You're upset because we made friends with your cat?
You're unreasonable people. You're holding our cat. Go in your yard and say, Mercury, go home. Don't come in our yard anymore.
She will not listen. She's a cat. She doesn't speak English. It's a cat, dude.
Really? Okay.
I hope this is staged, but the acting's pretty good, at least by the guy who's upset. He said, your cat doesn't, Mercury doesn't speak English. And he goes, oh, really? Let's listen to that part again. That's just brilliant. Either way, this is quality entertainment.
Come in our yard anymore.
She will not listen. She's a cat. She doesn't speak English. It's a cat, dude.
Really? Okay. All right. Well, we'll have the police department figure it out.
Absolutely. Great
Okay?
idea.
All right, you cat pervert.
So it was good before, but when he yelled cat pervert, like it reached a new level.
Oh my God, you got
I've done nothing to bring the cat. I've done nothing to bring the.
Okay, so that was just platinum, right? Okay, so this was 2 back-to-back messages I received like 3 or 4 days ago. And so somebody sent me this. From cat pervert to this.
Kind of like sniffing, trying not to look crazy, but I was like, something smells really awful here.
That smell coming from one of the tanning bedrooms, where 39-year-old Derek Sink was found dead.
The first thing that kind of went off in my head was, lack of attention from the staff members at Planet Fitness, which is pretty disappointing because maybe it could have been prevented.
Sink's family tells 13 News he went into a tanning bed at the gym on Friday, but wasn't found until Monday morning.
Okay, so that's completely effed up. The guy comes in there on Monday. I assume it was open at least on Saturday, the place. So the guy dies inside a tanning bed. It's a closed tanning bed. And there's a corpse in there. They don't recognize it on Friday. It's probably come in on Saturday. I assume it's open on Saturdays, maybe even Sunday. It might be open all 7 days. People work out on the weekends. And whatever happened there, Monday they start stinking him. Like he starts to smell, right? He's married, and I guess he said it was married. Did it say he was married? I don't know. And his wife, no one knows he's gone. And he's sitting there rotting, and rigor mortis is set in, and he's rotting, and he starts to smell. And they discover a corpse. Like, maybe, his wife didn't notice he was gone because he doesn't take Bluechew. And maybe he did take Bluechew. This is the cause. Or maybe he took the bloop. It's just all like, this is how fucked up things are. But there's a great comment here. Someone can die at the location. They can die at the location ignored, but you still can't cancel your membership online. Seems backwards. So this is what's going on here. So we know that kids are entering puberty earlier, but every other milestone, these developmental milestone, crawling was removed as a developmental milestone. So that's like one of the first things you do. And they've said, well, that's no longer a milestone. Like you're laying there like a sack of shit, right? You're a baby and you can't move. You can't do anything. Like you're just sitting there like waving, you slowly begin to, you're not even controlling your movements, right? This is what I was saying about cloning. Like you have these developmental milestones. So they got rid of crawling, which is like the first thing you can silently move around and you have some control over your environment. Like you're laying there, you can't hold your head up. You can't really control your body movements. And then they said walking alone was moved from 12 months to 15 months. So kids on average are doing that 3 months later. Rolling was moved from 4 months to 6 months. Again, 2 months, it's taken an extra 2 months. I think this has to do with the bloop, but maybe many other things. First word was moved from 12 months to 15 months. 2-year-olds are now expected to only use 2 words together rather than, I guess there's more of these things, right? And so, they've changed these developmental milestones and kids are developing more slowly, but of course they enter puberty more earlier. And then now they have to use Bluetooth or Blue, whatever it was. That stuff, Bluechew. And, the rest of these things. So it's an absolute mess. And now they're telling us that, well, we've had contact with aliens for quite some time now. Jesse Smollett has hoax charges overturned in shock ruling. And so you remember this guy, Jesse Smollett. Let's get rid of this thing here. I saw this on Fox News and they were losing it because they were like, he demonized all those MAGA people, the good MAGA people. And he said, all this stuff. And I'm like, the whole thing was silly. Abel and Ola Osundario, the Timon and Pumbaa, remember? He used to call them the Hakuna Matata brothers. They were these guys who were bodybuilders, and he paid them to do this. And they stood up in court. They stood up in court, and he said, don't. I'm not going to commit suicide. Remember, he lost it. They're the two guys there, and but apparently there's a technicality, and he's getting off. Who cares? Like, I don't care. Just follow up on that, and follow up on this as well. John Stamos slammed for wearing bald cap in solidarity after Dave Coulier's cancer diagnosis people found it insulting. You know, after all the crap that these guys have done, you know, I covered some of my first videos in the celebrity realm were about Full House and how these kids were completely fucked up by that show. And there's a lot of pedo stuff and a lot of inappropriate things. And they, like, this guy tells a story, Dave Coulier, about dropping his pants. Let me just show you that.
And we had that just about every episode. And so it was difficult at times because Mary Kate and Ashley were 8 months old when we started. So they could only be, because of child labor laws, on the set for a finite amount of time. And when you lost them, that was it. That's all you got. So you had to get what you needed.
And they produced such quality acting.
At that specific moment. So we used to bribe them with gummy bears. Yeah, that was a big deal. I'll give you a red gummy bear. Okay, you got it, dude. Yeah.
Okay, so this guy's just always been really creepy. And that sounds pretty creepy.
So it was challenging at times. You
mean they're 1.5 years old and you're giving them red gummy bears? And, you know, is that a metaphor for something else, you creep?
The three of us, me, Bob, and John, we got in trouble a lot from the moms because...
Okay, so they got in trouble a lot from the moms. And I've documented this. One time, Bob Saget told a story where they had a doll that was in there for mapping or whatever they call it, where they stage the scenes and they know to where to put the cameras and all these things before they shoot the show. And he had a doll he was carrying around with him, like a plastic doll that was a baby, like it was a baby doll that's supposed to be the Olsen twins. And he eventually throws it down on a bed or table and starts R-ing it, right? He starts having sex with the doll. And the moms come down because the kids have access to what's going on. There's a camera in their like homeschooling room, and they're all watching him do this. And there's all these things like that they admit to, and then there's things that they don't. But all these girls entered rehab. You know, they all had issues. Jodie Sweetin was a major addict. She's been married like 3 or 4 times, lost custody of her kids, and had all these issues, right? And the Olsen twins, went into rehab. Some of it, the other girl had, the Christian one, had the oldest daughter. She had bulimia. John Stamos went into rehab, right? Like everyone in this cast is completely fucked up, especially the kids.
What we didn't realize is that the kids are backstage and they have monitors in their rooms. So
yeah, you would have realized that the first time. Like he's making it sound like they didn't realize that, but it happened. There's a number of times where the moms came down and yelled at them for doing inappropriate things. Jodie Sweetin was asked at Bob Saget's, his roast and said, "When did you find out he was a dirty comedian?" Because Bob Saget was one of the worst, gross comedians, right? And she said, "Oh, I always knew Bob was dirty." I mean, there's all these things. You guys have seen my videos. I covered this. There's so much creepiness in the show itself and so much, bad stuff. And then this guy's, telling the story where he's saying, well, we didn't know. Well, we would every time after you did it the first time, you would know, right? Oh, we forgot about the kids were watching. You knew they were watching every time. And you did it probably because they were watching, right?
We're trying to make the crew laugh and keep ourselves loose doing our scene.
Because, that show, I mean.
So I think one night it was late, and we had this scene, we couldn't get it, where John, Bob, and I had to walk around this van and come out, and I said, let's just take our pants off. And, okay, all right. Yeah, let's take our pants off. So we walked.
So, which is a thing that you do in a work environment, right? I mean, and the kids are watching, which they know.
Walked around from the van, and we're all standing there, and the crew's dying, and
so naked.
The producers, everybody's cracking up.
They're cracking up because it sounds so funny.
So then about 30 seconds later, as we're, slapping each other in the back, yeah, that was funny, we made everybody laugh, here comes...
That sounds really kind of gay, bro.
Jodie Sweetin's mom and Candace Cameron's mom, and Adria Later, who was, she was our teacher for the kids. And they're all standing there, and we're like, oh, we're in trouble. We did it again.
I thought you didn't know the kids were watching, though. You did it again?
My idea to take our pants off. Sorry. The kids are backstage, you guys.
So, boy, he's annoying. Like in a sea of Bob Saget was horrible. I covered him the most. And then his weird death. Remember, he had a bizarre death where his skull was fractured on both the front and the back from falling down, and he felt like he was all right, went to sleep, but he had a severe hematoma head injury, and he never woke up. And, completely suspect, right? But he was a real creepy MNFer. And of course, John Stamos, I mean, they're all really, disgusting. He might be the worst one. And then, now he's got cancer. Dave Coulier addresses backlash over John Stamos' bald cap. Dave Coulier has responded to the backlash, announces cancer diagnosis last week. I used to cover this stuff a lot more in Full House and then all the cancers. I'm sorry to see a bunch of negative comments as I've just begun my cancer journey. It's our friendship, me and John, and this is how we are handling a very tough time. I'm a comedian, and humor is what drives me. John knows how to cheer me up. And I laughed out loud when he arrived wearing a bald cap, being a true loving friend and brother. So he announced he had stage 3 non-Hodgkin's lymphoma diagnosis on the Today Show on November 13th. It's a type of blood cancer. And it starts in the lymphatic system. So, it sounds like he's 65, and this looks like turbo cancer, and, looks like the Full House cast is dropping like flies, and Stamos is next on the list. It's like these horror shows where all these groups of people die at once, like this kind of stuff. But, I don't care about the bald cap thing, but Full House was an absolute disaster and a mess. And so then there was this. There's a bunch of these memes, a couple with Kamala Harris and Mike Tyson talking about their respective losses. I don't have that meme. But Jake Paul has challenged Jimmy Carter, age 100, to a boxing match after beating Mike Tyson, age 50. That's kind of funny. But then I saw this one. Some say it was legit. Some say it was staged. Some say it was a humiliation ritual. But I found it wild that the most anticipated fight of the year just happened to be on the same day the Pentagon failed yet another audit. Pentagon fails 7th audit in a row, but says progress made. This is the stupidest meme ever. Because if this fight wasn't on that day, nobody would notice. Just like I'm going to talk about, I've already done the voiceover you're about to listen to, and I referenced this meme in it. But the same thing with the aliens. People don't give a shit, right? You don't need a Tyson Jake Paul debacle to distract people from an audit about the Pentagon. Oh, yeah, people would have really paid attention if it wasn't for the fight. It's the 7th failed audit, and people don't give a shit. The news doesn't cover it, and even if it did, people don't even know what that means. They're too stupid. They don't have any reference point, and the truth community has devolved, and even if they didn't, there's no pathway to do anything about it. There's no rule of law or justice. It's stupid to say these things are distractions, because even if these distractions didn't happen, the things wouldn't be covered anyway. People don't care about it. And if you bring it up on social media, people don't pay attention to it, right? All my viewers now know about this audit failed, and what difference are the ones who are watching this video, and what are you guys going to do about it, right? Okay, so you guys all know now. What are you going to do about it? If every person in America knew about this audit, what would we do about it? Right? Another failed audit? Well, I don't know. Let's what are we going to do, right? There's nothing. Stop talking about distractions, because the whole thing is a distraction. Everything, including this stupid fight and the rest of it. Everything's a distraction. But even without the distractions, people don't care about real shit, right? You can tell them the real thing, and they don't want to hear it. You can tell them what they need to do, and they don't want to do it. You can tell them what they need to know, and they don't want to know it. Anything that involves change or self-development or a real solution that would, inevitably take down a system that they're 100% dependent on, all of us were like, oh, okay, give me the blue pill. That's the reality, or the red pill, or whatever the fuck it is, the blue pill. One of those two pills, the one that makes you go back into the matrix. Give me that one, right? That's how people feel. Anyways, let's get to the voiceover here. I just want to add one more little thing to this, just, caveat. See, I don't care about what people believe. and I don't care what people think about my beliefs, right? Like people think that I want their opinion about my beliefs, and I'm like, my beliefs are fluid, and they've changed, and as new information has come in, and just even like becoming a truther in 2005 or whatever it is. I mean, always been a little bit of a truther. Becoming spiritually, I guess, awakened in 2000 or 1993. That was significant change in my understanding of the world. And that developed, it was not an immediate epiphany. I mean, there was an epiphany, an experience that led to all these, information, either through, like, information that came through either through my meditation practice or the literature of the Sajmark system. And my understanding of the nature of a human life and the soul and the life of the soul. I mean, there's more information about the journey of the soul and your soul's purpose and spiritual aspect of life and a relationship with the divinity within you in the Sajmark literature, and it pales in comparison to the experiences you have, which are much more important. Because you can read about shit in books, but experiencing those things are much more important. And these whispers of the brighter world messages, I just had an exchange with this guy called the Dodgy Truther. There's this guy Dodgy who took over. He wasn't took over. He was given the position of master, and the position of master isn't really a real position, but it's the president of the Sri Ramchandra mission, which is Sajmarg, which is the meditation that I do. And then he turned it into this Heartfulness cult, except he's too stupid and too, clumsy to run a real cult. So it's a cult wannabe. And it's, a disaster for all these people who have done the practice for years, whether they're aware of it or not. Huge fall off. I mean, it's went from something that was wonderful to something that's not only just bad, but like goofy and just stupid. And there's a guy there, there's a bunch of people there, and there's one guy in particular that I call the Dodgy Truther. And he's one of the people that's out there talking about what a piece of shit Kamlesh is. And he sends me information, like recently the SEC going after Kamlesh's son for $170 million of investor fraud, embezzlement or whatever. That Kamlesh's pharmacies, like this guy who runs Dodgy's pharmacies, were, created this business, right? I've talked about this in other videos. They forged and inflated the value of their business according to the SEC complaint and stole, whatever you want to call that, defrauded people out of $170 million of investor money. Somebody invested like $80 million based in faulty data, right? Which is a problem. And then they absconded with the money to India, right? This is supposed to be a spiritual leader. But this guy, the Dodgy Truther, does not like the Whispers books. And he listened to a recent video of mine, and he was telling me, why Whispers is fake. Like this French woman, this whole thing. There's people who don't like it, that do my meditation, right? But the third master of the system, he had trouble accepting it because he wanted or thought he was going to be clairvoyant or was going to be a medium himself. It turned out he just didn't have the time and the sort of like the spiritual proclivity to do that. But at first he had trouble accepting it, and then once he accepted it, he loved these books, and he published these books in beautiful format, these wonderful, like, beautiful books, 5 of them, and then collected, many more messages that haven't been published yet, right, or whatever they are. But there are people who love these books, and I was one of them, and I had spiritual experiences, and a lot of the stuff I do as a truther comes out of me validating things that were said in the books, right? There's truther stuff in the books about all kinds of things, about electromagnetic pollution, which is Wi-Fi and all these things, and what it does to your subtle bodies and to your, you said your glands are like the guardians of your body, your various glands in your body, and they have an effect that modern day medicine doesn't know about, and that this electromagnetic poisoning in modern day life is so hard on these parts of your body that are also at spiritual centers, right? Interesting shit like that. And, a lot of stuff that has to do with truther stuff, money power. He uses the phrase money power in these messages. And I started doing research on these things at the same time as I started to become aware of the truther narratives about the big event, 9/11 in 2001, and all these other things, right? There's an interesting message about it where he, says, wake up if you're not awakened. I'll cover that when I read the prophecies. Like, I'll start off with that maybe, if I can remember to do that. Hopefully I will. People can remind me if they're interested around the time I do the prophecies. And so if I don't do it, then I can follow up with a video I'd like about that. But my becoming a truther is connected to these Whispers books. And then I got really sick and was going through a crisis. And I was basically had to fast. And I was reading these Whispers books, one of them like the 5th edition. And I read it on a completely different level. Like my consciousness went to a much higher level. And I can't reach that level right now, so I can't really even do justice. But it was like I referenced that book and movie Flowers for Algernon, which is sort of about this, right? Like where you just penetrate to a higher level of consciousness. There was a guy who had mental disabilities and a mouse called Algernon, and they were given this drug. And the mouse became like the world's smartest mouse, and the guy became the world's smartest man. And then the mouse dies. And then the man knows that he's going back to being like a mentally, challenged person. But for a little bit, he penetrated to a higher level, and like that happened with me. But why I'm saying all this is people are always going to have different opinions about things, even on an organizational level, and you might agree on some things, like me and this guy agree that Dodgy's a piece of shit, but we totally disagree on Whispers. And, I don't understand his position at all, and I don't care. But he decided to, lecture me about my position, so I sent him a voiceover, which I've now included in a Journey series. Like, he hasn't responded back to me. And it's not like we're close or we really know each other. But you have this with people in your life. Truthers have battles over, like, little details and things. And, I just don't give a shit about any of that stuff because we're always learning new things. We're always changing our opinion. If you're not doing that, the right-wing truthers never do that. The cubies, they have a fixed mindset, and they have a fixed template, and they just say the same bullshit over and over again for years. They're not evolving. They're not developing. They're fixated on something. People get fixated, like the flat earthers, the ones that get fixated on just that, and that's all they think about, or the Pizzagate people, or the you got to be flexible and realize you're not going to know things for sure. And when you start thinking you know things for sure, you're screwed, right? And so what I will say about this, though, is I've been one of the first ones in a lot of these different areas. I was like the first one to talk about cloning, or one of the first truthers saying that if they can clone an animal, they can clone humans. And so I did lots of videos about that, but I recognized that there's things we didn't know. But what I knew based in what's available in terms of technological data is they can't clone somebody and stop them from developing, like clone them where they clone the person and they grow to 70 in 3 months, 70 years old. And then they take the clone out and they replace like Joe Biden with the clone. Like they don't have the technology for that because, you have to go through developmental milestones. And if you were a 70-year-old clone, if they could expedite the growing process, which they can't do. Cloning right now is taking cells, either, a cell from, or taking a cell from like a dog and then putting it in an like embryo type format in another female dog. And that dog gives birth to the cloned dog. So if they're going to clone your dog, it would just go through a natural birthing process. It's just the way they inseminate the pregnant mother with cloned embryo instead of a regular, impregnated egg and, sperm and things like that. And so it follows this same, and then the clone is born like a baby. It's not, they don't have accelerated. But there's all this bullshit that people were claiming, and they were trying to tell me about it. And I'm like, I was here before you were. Like again, I'm not all that into the cloning thing, but, I researched this stuff for years and I covered it. And I have a logical mind and, practical mind. And you're just talking about bullshit because somebody said something, you saw a video, and you bought into it without thinking about it because you don't have the capacity for critical thinking, right? And more importantly, that's just one example. But I've seen this over and over again where there are people who resist something. Like my brother didn't like the Whispers books. And then years later, he started telling me about them. And I'm like, I've been here for years, bro. Like, I'm way ahead of you because I've been doing this for years. You're a newbie. You just started. Like I already knew about these things. you rejected it at first, and now you're telling me about it when I've been here for, like this is the thing that people do. And there are people who have rejected the truther narratives and pushed back against them. And then all of a sudden they wake up and they start telling you how it is, right? And you're like, well, I've been doing this for years, and you're back in stage one where I was 10 years ago. But this is how people are, right? And like that's why I say I don't get into any of this stuff, because I can't, I can't bring people. I mean, sometimes some of it is just you got to put some time into it, and you have to develop. You have to always be flexible and open to what's possible, and all these things. But the big thing about this thing with UFOs is they've been lying to you about it, and they're now admitting it. They've been lying to you years. Just for them saying, I can't tell you here. I can't let the mob know. I can't let the freaking sheeple and the people, the masses know. But since you're a congresswoman or whatever, I can talk to you behind closed doors. But I can't give you that answer in public because they're not allowed to know about, something that would change everything, right? It would change their whole perspective on everything. All these religions, all these, scientific, bullshit they've put out would be changed by the knowledge of the true origin of our species. And that information has already been put out there, in the Whispers of the Brighter World and these other places in this, whatever it is, these books and, the literature and the knowledge, the base that's there, but also in other places scientifically and things like this. And people should pay attention, like there are people who have been doing this stuff for years that are aware of these things and have thought about them and have gone through a whole process that you're just starting, right? And like, if you're just starting something, you're not a fucking expert. Just because you've had an epiphany, and it's good you had one, and it's good that you have enthusiasm, but, sometimes you just shut up and listen, right? And that's what people don't do. Like, people immediately think they're experts on something they rejected a year ago, right? So anyways, just thought I'd add that. Let's get back to the dick pills here.